Rolling blackouts, the collapse of infrastructure and rampant crime. Is South Africa on its way to being a failed state, or has it reached that point already? Experts point to a leadership crisis at the heart of this collapse. Business Unity South Africa President Bonang Mohale joins me now in studio to further unpack this. Prof, good afternoon. Welcome to today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Braden.
We've been focusing on leadership crisis on eNCA since the beginning of the week. I mean, the country is facing a myriad of crises, if you want to say, and every day reveals another one. But there's an argument between people who say, no, we're still okay, we're not a failed state, or maybe we might be failing, we're not sure. But I saw your views, I read about your views just a few weeks ago, where you were very unequivocal. We are a failed state, are we?
I think, you see, countries like farms, like airlines, take a long time to die. So whilst we are arguing about semantics, die they do. So I would argue that not only are we a failed state, but we are both a failed and a mafia state. We are on record as saying we have more than 10 organized crime syndicates that operate as the mafia. In fact, in South Africa, you've got a more than 80% chance of getting away with crime once committed.
So it's complex. It's not only are we a failed state in your view, we're also a mafia state. So our state has been criminalized.
Absolutely. But also let's look at how it manifests. So first, inequality is widening. Racism is at an all-time high. It's black graduates that are roaming the streets hopelessly. Crucial infrastructure is laying in decay. Public education has collapsed. Public health care continue to fail the poor and the miserable. In fact, lawlessness has now become an epidemic.
So if we are there already, who should begin to take us out of there? And in the context of there's a general election coming up next year, and we hear these political parties, including the governing party, the ANC, saying they've got plans to change things, things are going to improve. What should change?
So we've always had plans. If there was an Olympic sport about development of plans, South Africa would win hands down. You'll remember RDP was the first. After that, it was GIE. Then as Giza, NDP 2030, our problem has never been plans. Our problem has always been doing the execution. It is General George Patton who reminds us that great wars are won by good execution, not great plans, because good execution will save even a mediocre plan. In fact, it gets worse. We are now holding the world record for all the wrong reasons. The most unequal society in the world. 2010, we took over from Brazil, Gini coefficient 0.63. We have the highest unemployment rate in the world at almost, whether you say 36 or 46%, it doesn't matter, whether it's an expanded definition. That unemployment is worse than countries that are at war. We have the highest SME failure rate in the world. In BRICS, new jobs created are north of 60 percentage points. In South Africa, it's south of 15 percentage points. We have second only to Russia, suicide rate in the world, GBV rate not by a factor of 2, by 5 times the global average. So all those indices indicate to us that in fact we are not teetering on a failed state, we are bang in the middle of a failed state.
What should change?
Leadership. You know, the effect that leadership has on any organization, any country, is a minimum of 40 percentage points. You love or hate Paul Kagame of Rwanda. 27th of April, when we were in snaking queues to vote, to usher in our democracy, 800,000 Tutsis were massacred. At the end of the month, 1 million. But in only 20 years, you go to Kigali, the capital, you get free Wi-Fi on public buses. Ladies, 23:30 at night, Maltese poodle on their bum shots. They go to an ATM to withdraw. You and I can't go to an engine in Van Buren Street in Bedfordview, midday, just 10 meters away, and run a gauntlet to get to our car safely. So indeed, we are a mafia state.
When you talk of Paul Kagame, is an example that I've used as well in other conversations, but I mean, he's like an iron-fisted man. Do we need, what is the word, benevolent dictator in South Africa?
Lee Kuan Yew, fired and expelled by his own country, Malaysia, because they were hopeless backwater. They didn't have any hope. He was a benevolent dictator. It doesn't matter what you are. You have to love your people to lead them. In just 40 years, they were able to pick themselves up by their own bootstraps to being in the top 10 per capita income countries in the world.
Now, leadership is not just political. When we talk about leadership, you are a business leader yourself. What should the role be, therefore, of leadership across the board, whether it's politics, whether it's it's business, whether it's civil society, whether it's faith-based leadership? What should we be doing today to lift this country out of the morass that it's in today?
Let me make an easy example. I'm on record in saying if South Africa is going to work, it is because business has decided it will make South Africa work. Because only business understands this notion of a project management, how to deliver mega projects on time and in full. Here's the example. This event that happened on the 15th of March, 2015, hashtag Rhodes Must Fall, against decolonization of institutions and the mind, morphed very quickly to mid-October into hashtag Fees Must Fall. Department of Higher Education and Training did a study in 2022, audited. It can be that for 7 years, every year without fail, these students embark on disrupting all the 26 institutions of higher learning because of financial exclusion. And yet we know that education is the surest way in which you can transcend social classes. And we're not asking businesses to give us more money or to create more profits. We are simply saying 98% of the 350 SMEs, 1.5 million mid-sized companies. These are companies that have a turnover in excess of 300 million. 400 that are listed on the JSE, and the 80 that are in equities that are related to private equity, and they hold those securities across 40 countries. If all of them have some sort of a corporate social investment, and all of them have 4 focus areas. On all those 4, one of them has to do with education. All we're asking is, imagine if every single solitary one of these companies were to just redirect, not give us new money, no less than 1 million rand. The audited figures say to educate the 1.2 million of these students is 50 billion per annum. But historical debt is 16.5 billion. 9.2 is unrecoverable. If every company gave us a minimum of 1 million rand and we put it in a historical debt fund, we wipe off this entire debt within 1 year.
Why is business not doing that?
Especially because 100,000 of these kids have already completed their studies, but they can't graduate because they owe these institutions. So we are going to agitate and orchestrate to business to say, if we save this, you have a chance of restoring your integrity, your reputation, and indeed your credibility.
And hopefully fixing the future of some of the young people, the graduates. Okay, before you go, Prof, you mentioned on the business thing, I just want your view. I mean, I saw a story, the fact that when Eskom was going through a lot of difficult times under Andre de Ruyter, the now former CEO, and he told Parliament when he was speaking to Scopa earlier this month, he said that business funded the investigation of the alleged mafias and malfeasance in Eskom. Busisiwe Mavuso of BLSA confirmed to media that 18 million rand was paid by BLSA, which is made up of business, for this investigation by George Fiver's Forensic and Risk. What's your take on such a move?
2 things. One, BLSA is one of the 67 members of BUSA. BUSA is the apex organization of other organizations. So BLSA is member number 1. There's 40 others of the size of BLSA. So they're absolutely capable of talking about this issue and dealing with it. But they will have to account at BUSA, the apex organization, about the context, what are the circumstances, etc. But my last point is the one I think that is much more telling. You see, business is not innocent. We know, we saw with SPAR, we saw with Steinhoff, we saw with Bain, we saw with the companies that did things that they shouldn't. Tonga Hewlett, 150-year-old company that was simply destroyed out of greed. So I think a serious intervention is required to steer business back, because we can't speak of a just society. It's incongruent to speak of a just society when business is seen to be at the apex of injustice.
Thank you very much for your time this afternoon and your views. The president of BUSA, Business Unity South Africa, Bonang Mohale.